There's a reason most summer camps have rules. Some say it's about keeping kids safe away from the water at night, away from the woods, away from the things that can hurt them. But at Crystal Lake, the rule has always been the same. Never swim after dark. They tell the campers it's because of sharp rocks hidden under the surface, because of sudden currents, or because the lake is too dangerous at night. But the counselors know the real reason, because sometimes, if you stand too close to the lake after midnight, you'll hear a girl's voice, soft, broken, calling your name. And if you answer her, you may never come back out of the water. The story begins decades ago. It's back in the 1960s. A girl was staying at the camp one summer, about 14 years old. No one can even agree on her name anymore. Some say it was Lisa, some say Anna, some whisper it was never written down. But every version ends the same. One night, she and a friend snuck out of their cabin. They walked through the dark woods, laughing quietly, until they reached the dock. The water shimmered under the moonlight. The girl stepped onto the dock and slipped into the lake. At first, her friend thought she was playing. She splashed once, then twice, and then she was gone. Her friend waited, calling her name, but she never came back up. By the time the counselors arrived with lanterns, the lake was perfectly calm. Only her clothes remained folded neatly at the end of the dock. Her body was never found. They searched for days. Divers swept the lake, dragging the muddy bottom, searching every inch. But nothing surfaced. It was as though the water had swallowed her whole. After that summer, the whispers began. Campers swore they could hear faint splashing in the middle of the night when the water was perfectly still. Counselors claimed they woke to the sound of wet footsteps outside their cabins, squishing softly in the dirt. Kids dared each other to look out their windows, to see the pale figure waist-deep in the water, her long hair hanging over her face, staring back at them before silently slipping beneath the surface. By the 1980s, the drowned girl had become part of the camp's culture. Every summer, new campers heard the warning. Don't answer if she calls for you. It was told at every bonfire, every cabin, passed down from one generation of kids to the next. But some of the stories weren't just rumors. Some came from people who swore it really happened. In the summer of 1998, one counselor named David remembered an incident he would never forget. A group of boys dared their friend to jump into the lake at night and swim across to the other side. The water was calm, the moon was out, and at first everything seemed fine. The boy swam halfway, his arms slicing through the black water. But then he stopped. David watched as the boy's head dipped under once, twice, and then disappeared for too long. The counselors panicked, racing to the dock, diving into the water. They dragged him back to shore, unconscious and not breathing, lips turning blue. Somehow they managed to revive him, but when he gasped awake, he wasn't the same. He screamed, thrashing, saying over and over again that she had grabbed him, that she had pulled him under. The next morning, his parents arrived to take him home. He never came back to camp. Stories like that should have been enough to shut the place down, but the camp kept running. Kids kept returning. The drowned girl kept being seen. In 2012, 2 counselors on night rounds swore they heard crying near the dock. A girl's voice, faint and broken. When they followed the sound, they saw her. A girl crouched at the very end of the dock, her long hair dripping into the water, shoulders shaking as though she was sobbing. At first, they thought it was just a camper who had wandered out of bed. They called to her, but she didn't respond. One of the counselors walked closer, flashlight beam trembling as it lit up her pale arms. When he was just a few feet away, the girl suddenly stood up and leaped into the water. But there was no splash. The lake remained perfectly still. When they shined the light down into the water, there was nothing, no ripples, no bubbles, nothing. The next morning, they found wet footprints on the dock leading all the way to cabin 6. The footprints stopped at the door. But inside, every camper was still asleep. And then came the summer of 2019. A group of older campers decided to test the legend themselves. They sneaked out after midnight, daring each other to sit by the water. At first, everything was quiet. They laughed nervously, trying to scare each other with retellings of the legend. But then they heard it, a faint cry drifting from the middle of the lake. A girl's voice, soft, broken, whispering. One of the boys froze. It wasn't just a cry. It was his name. At first he laughed, insisting it had to be one of his friends messing around. But then the voice came again, louder, closer. His friends shined their phone flashlights across the water, and that's when they saw it. Just beneath the surface, a pale face was staring up at them. Eyes wide open, unblinking, hair floating like black weeds around her. One boy stepped closer, the light trembling in his hand. The face didn't move, it just stared. Then his phone slipped from his grip and splashed into the lake. He cursed and bent down, reaching his arm into the water to grab it. That's when the others screamed. A pale hand shot up from beneath the surface, wrapping around his wrist with impossible strength. He shouted, struggling, his eyes wide with terror as the unseen force tried to drag him in. His friends grabbed him, pulling with all their strength until finally he broke free. They stumbled back onto the shore, and the boy was shaking violently, his teeth chattering. Skin was ice cold, his wrist marked with the bruises of slender fingers. He refused to say what he saw under the surface. He only cried silently, refusing to return to the water's edge. To this day, Camp Crystal Lake has the same rule. No swimming after dark. If you ask, they will tell you it's because of safety. That's what parents want to hear. But the counselors know better. They have seen too much. They have heard the cries. They have seen the footprints. And they know what happens if you answer her call. So if you ever find yourself standing at the edge of a lake at night and you hear a girl's voice crying softly, begging for help, calling your name, don't answer. Don't move closer. Don't let curiosity pull you to the edge of the dock, because once you do, it's already too late. And if you think you're safe because you're far from Crystal Lake, don't be so sure. Because sometimes, legends don't stay in one place. Sometimes, they spread like ripples in the water. And sometimes, the dead get lonely. And sometimes they're hungry.